Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Tid Bit Tuesday with Ekklesia Real Estate. We're not live this time because I could not figure it out, which I'm sure it's really easy to do, so forgive me for that. Next week, I will figure out how to do that for our next live guest. But today we have a very special guest. He's actually one of our realtors here at Ekklesia Real Estate. He's also very newly, as of a week ago, a licensed appraiser. Am I right on that, Heath? You are now
Well,
licensed.
that close.
You passed the test.
I passed the test, just waiting on that final approval and actual license. But yeah,
Okay, so in
for the
my eyes,
most part.
you're a licensed appraiser. I love it. And so Heath has answered a lot of questions for me, but one of these questions, especially in the times of COVID-19, is what is my house worth? People keep asking me that. People are scared their valuations are dropping super low, that there's huge corrections, and people are just really wanting to know what their homes are worth. And so, Heath, I just have a couple questions for you. Our Tidbit Tuesdays are usually pretty quick, and so uh, feel free to answer as short as long as you want. But just for the public out there, I want to start kind of just saying, as appraisers are the ones that when you're purchasing a house, they go in and make sure the house is worth what you are under contract for. And so I'm going to let Heath expand on that a little bit more, because our first question is, what is the role of the appraiser in real estate these days?
Okay, so yeah, that's a broad question. I'll try to hit it short and sweet to the majority of residential properties that we're looking at, because the role of appraiser, for the most part, stays the same as far as the concept of what an appraiser does. But there can be a lot of different nuances getting into different markets and whatnot. So I'm not going to jump into all that. So any of the questions that I'm answering today is going to kind of stick to that residential, your typical house, because there's always going to be some exceptions and stuff. But so what's the role of an appraiser in that typical situation? So when you're dealing with financing, the role of the appraiser is really to protect the lender. Now, if you're a cash buyer, you don't have to order an appraisal. But a lot of times, I might recommend it, especially if you're not too familiar with buying a lot of houses and whatnot, and not too familiar with how to gauge a value range and whatnot, because that's really what an appraiser is, like an unbiased third party. Hey, let me just analyze the market and see what the potential value range of this particular property is going to be. That's really the role of an appraiser in a short condense. I can go into more detail if you want, but that's really what it is. He goes in, she goes in to do some research on a particular property, compares it to other houses that have sold. Now, there's a few different approaches to the way we come to value, but the most typical one that you'll find as the primary one that we lean on, that appraisers lean on, is that sales comparison approach. So it's what are the most comparable properties around you, so the ones that are most similar to the property you're trying to get a value on, and comparing it, the ones that were most recently sold, and just comparing the most major aspects of the house to kind of get a value range. And most times it's going to fall somewhere in that range of those houses that have sold in that bracket of value, whether the lowest house that we find and the highest value that we find, it's probably going to fall somewhere in the middle there. But that's kind of the approach that we take, and that's really what you're looking at as far as value goes.
All right. Thanks for answering that. So my next question is, what do appraisers most look for when appraising a home?
Okay, so yeah, I kind of jumped into that a little bit early. It's that comparison of the major features, and that can change with the market, but around here, without going into too much detail and boring you guys, us as appraisers, we like to get into the nitty-gritty details of it. But really, those big aspects like square footage, which we will often refer to as GLA, which is gross living area. So the square footage of a home. Sometimes the size of the lot will be a big factor. Just the age and condition of the home. Some of those, and there's a few other major aspects that can come into play. But really, and if you're thinking of a neighborhood, if especially, you know, some of these what I call cookie cutter neighborhoods, you know, they're all fairly similar with just a few, you know, you might have some houses around 1,600 to maybe up to 2,000 square foot in that range. You know, if they all kind of fall in that area, they all kind of have typically the same lot square footage. You know, those factors are going to come into play when you compare them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every little piece is going to add value or detract value or something like that. So, you know, what we're looking at is, okay, we're really looking for some kind of evidence that, yes, this particular feature might add or detract value of the home that we're looking at. Hopefully, if that makes sense. Do you want to ask any clarifying questions there to what I just said? Kind of
No,
refine that, but
no, I think that's really good and really helpful, because it kind of goes into our next question already. It's kind of like a follow-up question, because a lot of times I have people who are like, well, we painted the house, or we redid the floors, or we've redone the kitchen and bathrooms, and of course all that stuff in like the grand scheme of things can help. But do things like the kitchen upgrades or the paint or the floor upgrades, how much do you take that into effect when you're doing an appraisal?
okay, that's a good question. So let me give just an example scenario for that. So again, taking to this idea, we're comparing it to other houses that have sold in that property's neighborhood. But let's say that it's a 1970s home, and you know there's no, it's got the original appliance in it. They still work and they function well, and everything. Um, you know, maybe there has been maybe the roof's been redone due to hail damage or something like that. Maybe there's been some big major things that have been updated, but nothing as far as like the look of the house, you know, the flooring, you know, maybe it's been painted once or twice here and there, you know, that kind of thing. But then you have all these other houses in the neighborhood that are also built kind of in the 1970s, but they all have new appliances in them and things like that. So that's going to be a big difference. And that's going to be something that we're going to be looking at and making adjustments to kind of match that. And ultimately, what we're going to look for is bracketing features. So if we can find one that maybe hasn't had any updating whatsoever, you know, maybe the property that we're looking at, you know, doing the appraisal on has had a few things here and there. Let's say maybe the bathrooms have been updated, but the kitchen hasn't, or you know, whatever. And then we have all these other houses that everything's been updated in it. Well, that gives us a good like middle range, and we can kind of begin to make adjustments based on that factor. And really around here again, you know, a lot of what, or by definition, an appraisal is an opinion of value. So while we have, you know, set criteria on like the means that we go about finding these, and how we analyze and what needs to be analyzed and whatnot, like, you know, we have some rules that we have to abide by, but at the end of the day, it's an opinion interpreting the data and everything that we collect. So you're going to get, you know, if you have a small range of value on those comps that are similar to that subject property, to that house that you're looking at appraising, well then, okay, the opinion of value is not going to vary too much there. But then you might have these neighborhoods where it's just really hard to find houses that are similar. And so then you're going to have a wide range of value. One appraiser might come in way down here at a low value, and one might come in a lot higher, just depending on what they felt like it was supposed to be. But anyway, back to, you know, that question of what really matters. Well, when you're comparing the two, you know, it may be really hard to find whether flooring itself actually brings any value. You know, one person might say, well, hey, yeah, it's a little bit older flooring, but it functions great. And, you know, it's good quality and everything. Like, I'm going to pay just as much for that house with that flooring as another house that has brand new flooring. And so, you know, if that's the case, which we actually do find quite often in our market around here, that flooring, while it could be a preference thing that can attract more buyers to your property, it might not necessarily add value to the property. But on the flip side, like kitchens and bathrooms, those typically will add value to them. So, you know, while I can't give you just necessarily a list of all the things, you know, the biggies that do bring value are kitchen and bathroom updates, adding square footage. If it didn't have a garage, but all the other houses in the neighborhood do have a garage, then that's probably going to add some value. But again, some of the things that you do, it may cost a certain amount to put it in or add it to it, but that doesn't mean you're going to get that same amount of value to it. I mean, I've done several appraisals where, new construction, they picked these specific types of materials and whatnot and spent $500,000, but no house in the neighborhood even sold for anywhere near that. And so there's just no way to appraise it at that high of a value.
Yeah.
Just because there's no proof that people are willing to pay that high in that particular neighborhood. So
Okay.
hopefully that helps.
No, that's great. I got a fun one for you, just because a lot of people always ask about these, especially in Fort Worth, is becoming increasingly popular. So it's kind of two questions in one. But how do you evaluate swimming pools and back houses?
Swimming pools and what was the second one?
Back houses, like a guest suite in the back.
Okay, those can be really tough. Again, you're ideally, in an ideal world, you're looking for houses that have exactly the same features so that you don't have to make adjustments for that. So hopefully, you find we do have a rule that we need to have at least 3 comps when we're using that method of approach to value. So we're looking for 3 other houses that had a swimming pool that was pretty much the same type of swimming pool. Doesn't have to be exact, but the same functionality, same quality, all that kind of stuff. Roughly the same size. If we can find that, then good. We don't have to make any adjustments on swimming pool. But what happens when you can't find that? Well, then we got to go in and we got to make, so we got to figure out, hey, is there any value to this or not? In some locations, there might not be. I mean, if it's like up in the north where swimming pools aren't as popular, there's a good chance that nobody would find any value in that and not want to spend any more money on that house. And so might not give any value to a swimming pool there. Obviously here in Texas where we're at, they are pretty popular. People do like swimming pools. So it does kind of add some value. And so ideally we're looking to try to narrow that down in each individual market. Now, as a whole across DFW, there might be like a wide range of value, but typically, you're looking at adding somewhere between 15,000 to 30,000 in value, and that may not be the same amount as what it costs to put the swimming pool in there. In fact, most of the time it's not. Usually it adds a lower value than what it costs to put in, at least what we find in this market at this point. But again, it always just kind of depends to the neighborhood and what's going on. We look for as much evidence as we can find to narrow that down before we put a number on it. Same thing with the guest house. It's the exact same scenario.
Cool, man. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, but everything that you said has been super helpful. We really appreciate you coming on Tid Bit Tuesday with us.
Yeah, hopefully it helped. Hopefully it makes sense to everybody.
It will. And if they have questions, guys, comment, reach out with any questions you have, and I can get them to Heath, or maybe I can answer them. Probably not. But I give them to Heath. But we'd love to sit down with you guys and come hang out with us over here at Ekklesia. We're a bunch of fun guys. Wear cool hats. I wish I could pull off fedora like Heath there. I can't. My face does not work for it. But
you gotta find your style, man. That's
gotta find my style. I'm good with just ball caps. So, but. But all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Heath, thank you so much. Have a great day, man, and we will catch up with you later.
All right, you too. Thanks for having me.